Well, hello and welcome to the skating lesson. We are thrilled to welcome the person of the week, really. I mean, the last couple of days, Christine, huge. You and figure skating goes together. I mean, like Bert and Ernie. I mean, Lucy and Ethel, this has been such a week for you. You are right in the mix of everything. You dropped a surprise for us. And I'm not talking about the article. I'm talking about this Netflix series, Bad Sport Gold War, that came out this week. It was like the comfort food television that I didn't know that I needed to watch. I've seen it 3 times. Christine, talk about it. How thrilled are you with the final product?
Well, Dave and Jonathan, it's great to be with both of you. I know there are tough subjects to discuss, very real, very personal, major issues in the sport, and courage of people like Tarah Kayne to come out and talk about it. And I know we're going to go there. And I want to, of course, and thanks so much for having me. But yes, to start out with the Netflix show, let me kind of go back in time and fill you in on my involvement, and then basically not having any clue what was going to happen after that. So I did the interview with the whole production group, wonderful people, all of them, here in Washington, D.C. in early February, I think 3rd it was, 3rd or 4th of 2020. So, you know, the before times, as they say, right? You know, at that point, we're hearing about cruise ships and people being quarantined in their rooms and somehow thinking, oh, that's over there, that's not going to hit us. So it really is a lifetime ago in the sense of, that I did that interview. Of course, I remembered I did it. I spent about 8 hours, maybe, 9, maybe even 10 hours that day being interviewed. They did the whole makeup thing, and then just I sat down and tons of questions. We took a break for lunch. I kept talking, and it was a full day of it. And of course, I knew what the topic was, that it was about the French judging scandal of the 2002 Salt Lake City Olympic Games. Of course, I was prepared for that. And I'd done a little research just to remind myself, because it'd been a while ago, and just, to remember a couple of the things that I might have forgotten or wanted to remind myself of. And we basically had a conversation. And I enjoyed talking about it very much and reliving it. And that was that. And I occasionally heard from some of the team. They would get in touch and ask a question or two. One little thing like, how did I want to be referred to? What's the right chyron for me? Things, obviously, ID me, those kinds of things that, of course, are part of any production. And they'd stay in touch, and I'd hear a little bit here and there. And then maybe 2 weeks ago, I heard from the director, and she said, it's going to be coming out soon. And we chatted briefly, and she said, I so hope that you like it. And of course, I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know if I'd be in it a little or a lot. I no idea who else they interviewed. And then I watched it Wednesday. It dropped on Netflix Wednesday, and I, like others, I just put it on and watched it over the course of a couple hours, interrupted a few times. And I laughed out loud at some things. I enjoyed it immensely. It really was a walk down memory lane for me personally. Again, had no idea they were going to use old clips of me. I had no idea what they were going to use. And I was so pleasantly surprised. I think they did a terrific job. And I'm really honored to be a part of that.
Loved the pink turtleneck from you and Robin Roberts. Great clip of you from 2002. I have to say, maybe the funniest moment, the editing of when you're talking about Anton Siegerlitz's step out on the double axel, and the way that Tamarra Moskvina is saying that this is not a mistake, these are details, and then the juxtaposition of Christine Brennan going, it was a mistake. It was.
Yeah. And by the way, as you guys would, of course, know from all of your vast experience in this medium, I had no idea that they were going to play that off. In other words, right. So I'm answering questions, but I think it is interesting how that works, right? Because there might be some people think, oh, they told you Tamarra says this, and like, oh, no. I just, what do you think? What did you think? It was a mistake. And so that's why it's so conversational. It's like, and the way I did laugh at that. And then the, oh my God thing that I'd forgotten. I mean, obviously it's been a year and 8 months, I guess. So I'd forgotten specific things I'd said for sure. I've talked about it a lot over the years, so I clearly have the general theme of what I have said and remembered that, but I totally had forgotten that I just said, oh my God. And that made me smile, and coming off with Sally Stapleford. So, yeah.
And I don't know, obviously I know that you are, from personally, I know that you follow politics extensively and things like that. They talk about Almazan Totakhanov in there, the Russian mobster that was allegedly involved in this. I don't know if you remember, I was reading a New Yorker article and he was involved in the Steele dossier. He was listed in there and I said, wait a second, he is from the 2002 Olympics Paris, which of course we love seeing the clips of James Comey. I mean, seeing worlds collide, it was fascinating in all of this. But also I wanted to get your perspective on Tamarra Moskvina. She is one of the most accessible figures from Russia to the Western media. I think widely regarded as one of the smartest people in figure skating. What was your take on her interview, her perspective, and everything that she had to say about this?
Yeah, well, I love Tamarra, as we all do, right? She's such a character. And, a little, speaking of kind of history and politics, whatever, she was born in June of 41. And it was interesting, Phil Hirsch and I were flying from Paris, from Lalique to St. Petersburg to spend a week there in 97 when I was working on Edge of Glory, and Phil was just doing his normal stuff for the Chicago Tribune. And we were on the same flight with Tamarra and Mission. And so we ended up talking to them, and Tamarra said, hey, we'll give you a ride, Phil and I, to our hotel. And my sisters are coming to pick me up, she said. So they'll give you a ride, jump in the car. Great. Well, her sisters show up at the St. Petersburg airport, which is tiny. Maybe it's changed now, but back then it was really just kind of looked like a little town airport. And the sisters show up and they're like 5'7". And for anyone who, I think everyone watching this, I'm sure knows that Tamarra, you can barely see her over the boards.
Yeah, she is not 5'7".
No, she is not 5'7". Right, she's she's probably 4'10", 4'11". I mean, I'm sure we could Google it in 1 second, but whatever, she's short and very, very short. And so I took one look at her sisters, and it was natural, Phil and I both, this is so remarkable and so obvious. We have to ask, right now, your sisters are so tall, what's up with you? Kind of with a smile, trying to be nice about it. She said, I was born, look at the date I was born, June of 1941, the siege of Leningrad. And as a little baby, all she could eat was maybe one cracker a day, or the stories go that people were eating tree roots because of the starvation, because of the Nazis, and the it was like an air. I guess when it was when the water froze, then they could get food to them, but airlift and what have you. But it was just a devastating time. So you look at Tamarra Moskvina and you see the face of World War II. And she really is, walking, talking history in all ways. We think of her skating, we think of her, obviously, her great pairs, her Olympic gold medals and world championships. But I think of that and just how amazing, it literally took my breath away when she said, the reason she's so short is because she was so malnourished and as a child, little baby growing up. So amazing. And also, I think, speaks to her survival instincts and everything about her, that she would survive that as a tiny baby and then continue to survive in all ways and be the rock star that she is even to this day. And, I have no idea. And as you guys know well, as a journalist, I'm never going to say something that I don't know is factual, right? I have no idea what Tamarra knew and what she didn't know about the 2002 judging scandal. I did laugh out loud several times, including that time near the end. Again, I knew none of this until I was just watching it like a viewer, right? I had no idea what's going to be in it. When they ask her about the mafia, and she goes, "Mafia?" I'm looking for the mafia. Oh, come on, that is just classic. That is so Tamarra Moskvina. And I remember Tamarra when Russia. Well, it was no longer the Soviet Union, but it was, basically still, in terms of the mindset. And she had a wad of $100 bills, and she was more of a capitalist than anyone I knew in the United States. I mean, she could work the system, she wheeling and dealing. So I don't know, and we'll probably never know. She has denied any knowledge of that whole deal. you know, Tamarra is a pretty smart person, and she also knows how to work everything. So I'll leave it at that. I wouldn't be surprised to find out she knew. But right now we'll take her word for it that she did not know, and we'll just keep looking.
How about the notion that Elena and Anton were disrespected by the media at that time in 2002? I think that's one thing that people, and you obviously, Sally Ann Peltier had an agent who was so on top of everything and getting them out there and exposed, as he admits. Do you think that the strength of the actual Elena and Anton and their merits were almost diminished by the media, or that they were somehow villainized? Obviously, they themselves as athletes likely had nothing to do with this entire situation.
Yeah, you know, Dave, that struck me. And actually it was poignant. I thought when Elena was talking about that, when again, the great work of everyone involved, the directors, producers, you know, editors of that Netflix documentary, you know, Gold War, as it's called, which is a really good name, I think, for it, that I think they captured that very well. And I hadn't thought about that or them for a long time. I think probably that week, as I was immersed in this and trying and breaking some of the stories and working on the story and getting information from all kinds of sources, as it alludes to in the you know, the documentary, where I talk about getting that call at 1 a.m. from a source on my phone telling me what had just happened in the lobby of the hotel where the judges were. And I had other sources that week. And, you know, I was just working a story, right? As any of us who were on it, it's just a story. And I'm frankly, if it had been the other way around, I don't know that anyone's ever asked me this, but I guess I just brought it up. Well, there wouldn't have been the intense interest because it wouldn't have been a North American pair. Mm-hmm. So let's say the Canadians win. Let's say it's the exact same thing. David steps out, a little bit of, you know, misses here or there, and the Canadians get the gold and the Russians get the silver. Well, my guess is you would have had the Russian media focusing on things, but since we're in Salt Lake City, it wouldn't have had the impact. I mean, to me, as I remember one time I was doing a radio show on one, you know, cell phone. I had 2 cell phones, and then I had another cell phone to my ear. I look like one of those, you know, cartoon characters talking to both people at the same time as I'm walking down a Salt Lake street, going to a TV hit or, you know, or just the practice or something. And I remember after I finished both calls, just like put the phones in my purse for a minute. And I just kind of went, I marveled to myself, like, what is this? And I'm right in the middle of it, which I, you know, as a journalist, you live for that, to be able to have the sources, which I've had from my books, and the great relationships from working with so many people in skating as a journalist, writing their stories or getting information from them for Inside Edge and Edge of Glory. And so a few years later, then of course this happens. So it all reaps a benefit. You treat people right, they treat you right. And you know, young journalists out there, you know, people want to be journalists. It's not gotcha. It's the complete opposite of gotcha journalism. It's working with people. It's a people business. It's just dealing with people in a human way and being fair and straight, honest with them. And hopefully you can have things happen in a good way as a journalist later. It can reap some benefits. And so I'm in the midst of all that. And it's just a story. I think for us, if you look back at why this was a story, in addition to the fact that you can clearly show the stumble by Anton and the landing on the throw, the scratchy landing by Elena, and then there's the question about the throw or the twist, right? Yeah, I think that was the third one.
Twist, yeah.
Yeah, so you can say that. I mean, you can quantify that, whether the Russians were so much more beautiful and lyrical and fabulous that overcomes it. The 6-0 system, of course, you know, kind of allowed that, which gave us the arguments that we all love about skating and we miss in some ways because of the 6-0, right? But the 6-0 was also incredibly flawed, and that's also the reason it was, you know, you could argue about everything. So that, you know, there was that. I mean, that was the root of this. And then for me and for I'm sure many US journalists and probably Canadian journalists as well, we're not watching it. I'm not watching the broadcast because I'm at the arena covering it. But all of a sudden, actually, I talked to my sister and she said, this is what the announcers are saying. It was Scott Hamilton and Sandra Bezic, and I think Tom Hammond was the play-by-play guy. And there, you know, and Scott obviously was very, very strong on that. And so that's what went out to the American public, right? That's what, and these are my readers because I work for USA Today and ABC, Good Morning and ESPN at the time. So whatever. So I think that's the genesis of the story. In other words, I didn't go into going, aha, let's delve into that. It happens, it's presented to you as a journalist, and then you start to make make calls and ask questions. In my case, I answered my cell phone at 1 a.m. and got that scoop, one of the most important scoops I've ever had. So I feel for Anton and Elena, to go back to your question. I get it. I get the conversation. If there are people from Russia or people who just were fans of theirs, and I like them a lot too. They're beautiful skaters and good people. I enjoyed very much dealing with them. I had nothing against them ever. I still don't, of course, but I can understand how people would go, well, how unfair was that? But the news was that the Canadians were second. That's news. I mean, whether you like that as news or not, that was the news. And then the notion was, were they robbed? And then you see the mistakes. And then, of course, I had the scoop that Marie Renlagun was saying that the fix was in. And then now it's a story. And so I sympathized with them, but it was absolutely a story. And it was the biggest, it took over the nation and the world, frankly. The cover of all those magazines, worldwide story. We're right in the middle of it. So at that point, as a journalist, it would be absolutely shirking my duties as a journalist to avoid that story. But I get it. And, the end result is they both have a gold medal. And I'm sure everyone is long since fine with it. And it was a little weird ending, but it was probably the right ending, considering it. I mean, the way they could and should have done it, if, really with that kind of corruption, let's just be honest, they should have taken the gold from the Russians and given it to Jamie and David and given them the silver. If that's really what they found, the corruption of a judge, you take her out and you put in the replacement, who I'm pretty sure would have gone the other way. That's a distant memory.
In the book, the second part talks about it.
Yeah, right. Oh, yes, which is a wonderful book, absolutely wonderful book. So, then they could have done that. That would have been a disaster. So I'm not advocating they do that, but that certainly was a remedy. And we see that all the time in steroid issues, right? Marion Jones does not have her gold medals. Lance Armstrong doesn't have his bronze medal from the 2000 Olympics. So many, people stripped of medals. That does happen. This was not steroids. Obviously, this was not drugs. But if this was cheating, but that would have been so harsh, and it wouldn't have made anyone feel. That would have been, it would have been the right thing, but the wrong thing. If that makes sense.
Wasn't there a gymnast, Dave? There was a male gymnast. Was it Paul Hamm or something? He got his gold medal by mistake because the judges had the wrong level of difficulty or something.
There was a problem at the 2004 Olympics in the all-around with the judging of one of the Korean gymnasts who was originally placed third. And under the rules, you have until the end of the competition to petition a score. This was not discovered until after the competition. Now, what Paul Hamm did, and you can argue it whatever way you want, is he went and defended his gold medal he went to the mattresses to defend it. And from a public relations point of view, it was kind of the opposite of what happened in 2002. And in many ways, he never really recovered from that, I think, in the court of public opinion, because he was seen as going against another athlete who maybe deserved that gold medal. His argument obviously being that they didn't go by the rules to go after a score. So it's kind of, like, what would Michelle Kwan do? Probably not what Paul Hamm did, but we'll never know, right? And it was kind of like the opposite situation there. So,
and I just add, I covered that, and I actually did a TV commentary, and I may have done a column, I forget, but I definitely did a TV commentary for ESPN saying he should give up the gold. I said, I realize this is very dramatic, and I totally understand if he doesn't. Again, it's my job as a columnist or opinion person to do that. So I did it, but the goodwill it would have engendered is your point, Dave. And in that time, 2004, right? We are right. It's after 9/11. We are in two wars. A lot of people love the United States. I love the United States. A lot of people around the world don't love the United States. There was a lot there. And I thought the gesture, the goodwill, let's put it this way, Dave, to your point, if Paul Hamm had done it, he would be remembered forever.
As humility, courage, sportsmanship, we'd be talking about him at every Olympics for what a great guy.
But it's okay that he didn't. It was his choice, but now he's just another name and another, a really great gymnast, obviously, but he would have gone into the history books for sure on that one.
Yeah, I think a PR person. But one of the things I want to talk to you about is that there's been a story that's been really developing over the last several years, and you've been a part of it, Christine, from the beginning. And obviously we talked in 2019 during the unfortunate passing of John Coughlin. Dalilah Sappenfield was his coach, and she was very vociferous on social media in the days after. Obviously at the national championships, we remember the red hats and that situation. And now we are seeing that one of her athletes, Tarah Kayne at the time, who was one of the ones who didn't wear the red hat when Dalilah had tried to get her to on the first day at the Nationals, has now come out and talked about abuse allegations with Dalilah. We've known that this has been going on in SafeSport for quite some time. Very slow. There is a temporary sanctions with 12 names. I've heard up to 60 witnesses against Dalilah at this point in time. So talk a little bit about the story and where we're at.
Yeah, and this is, and thanks, and I'm one of the reasons we wanted, or we talked about being on, and I said yes, is because I feel it's so important to reach the audience that you guys reach, and talk about, well, in this case, the courage of Tarah Kayne. Remarkable. And if people haven't read the story, it's really tough. We have a warning on it about, of course, the conversation, stories of abuse and self-harm. And it's something that's very important because I know that can be what they call a trigger warning, right? That people are aware of that. And that would be the same for this conversation that we're about to have. And I've learned a lot about that as I've worked on these stories. John Coughlin, as you mentioned, his tragic death by suicide, but the 3 reports of sexual abuse, allegations of sexual abuse of him, and then when he was suspended, as you well know from you finding it, I believe, first online, Dave. This was in January 2019, and then the next day, he died by suicide. So tragic, and every part of the story is terrible. And then Ashley Wagner came forward and told me her story, which I'm sure many people are aware of. You can find that online as well. And heroic and courageous, and wanting to be to tell what happened to her. And Ashley is not one of those 3 that were the original reports. So in this story, I've stayed on top of this. As you know, I've reported other stories, the courage, the heroism of a 13-year-old girl in Florida and her family coming forward about Morgan Cipres and John Zimmerman. And Cipres is out of the sport. And I'm sure we're going to talk about SafeSport. And I know
DDA, who was in the documentary,
yes.
Which they were talking about, it all comes together.
He was suspended for that, came back, and wanted to be ISU president, and of course running the French Federation for all this time, and then suspended or gone now because of how he's handled Cipres, but also there have been other major allegations in France.
From Marie Le Gagne is
right.
One of the ones who against him. So yeah.
Right, and then of course, skaters as well. So anyway, against several French coaches, as I recall. So I mean, it's everywhere. Sadly, tragically, it's everywhere. It's certainly not just the U.S. But with Tarah Kayne, the story that I broke on Friday morning, Tarah and I had been in touch for about a month, and we talked at length. And this is the process, and if anyone out there is watching and says, I might want to talk, or I know something about something what happened to you, or it happened to someone you're concerned about a coach's behavior, another skater's behavior. I am, what I will say now about Tarah is how I would handle all of these, and with total respect for the victim, the survivor. It's your story, it's your life. I am honored to listen. We start off basically in an off-the-record manner. That happens always with everyone. And that's not how a normal journalist would start a story. These are not normal stories. These are the most important stories I've ever covered, and I treat them as such. My editors at USA Today feel the same way. One editor I really work with. We are so careful. We are so cautious. We have a lawyer that works with us. Everything is secretive until that, and off the record, until the person decides if they want it to be on the record. If they don't, my respect for them is immense. Hence, of course, the 13-year-old with the Cipres story. But of course, that was also a minor. So a very, we probably, even if we'd gotten a name in that case on the record, which we didn't and would not have ever wanted to, I don't think we would, I think our USA Today policy is not to use it because of being a minor. So anyway, but Tarah, we talked and we worked through it, and I listened, and we just had, 4 or 5 conversations, 1 Zoom call, and we just kept talking. And we get to the point, and she got to the point where she felt very comfortable being on the record. But I realized how hard it was for her, and how difficult it is to tell this. And I think if any of us doubt this, it's like, oh, well, whatever, just, tell your story. Oh my goodness, you guys. For those of us who've been so fortunate to not have stories like this to tell, I think all we need to do is look at the answer from the gymnasts who were at the Senate hearing about 4 weeks ago, and how they described the toll it takes just to tell the story, not just, to tell the story in front of US senators and in front of the nation, and how they are just spent. They are done emotionally, mentally. It is so hard for them to even talk afterwards. And these are the best of us, right? The strongest among us, Olympic gold medalists. And they're still, it just takes so much out of them, understandably so, to tell their story. So if any of us doubts that, look at their comments from a few weeks ago. Well, I knew that it was very hard on Tarah, even though amazing courage. What a hero to keep pressing on, to keep telling me details. I would tell her, as I tell anyone I deal with on this, I'm so sorry that I have to kind of bore in as a journalist, but I want to make sure I get it exactly right. And I check and double check and triple check with someone like Tarah, and check in with her until the moment we're publishing, to make sure that it's okay. And I'm not trying to say, oh, good for me, right? Oh, no, I just want to give people, this is what any journalist should do. But these stories are so sensitive. They're such a huge part of our lives now, tragically, but they're so sensitive. And I cannot tell you how seriously I take it, how occasionally I'll have tears in my eyes as I'm listening to them. I know some people look at me as the tough, strong, hard, bitten journalist who breaks news and also has been tough on people over the years. Yeah, that's me, sure. But this is, I feel the culmination for my career is to handle this, to be the experienced person, whatever, to handle it so sensitively. I would never forgive myself, guys, if I didn't. Because this is, I said, this is their lives, this is their story. And I am just honored to be the conduit to tell it, to hopefully help others, to hopefully stop bad people and get them out of a sport, in this case, skating. And that Tarah was just what a gem and what a class act, and so courageous, and what a hero. But how hard that was for her. And I know that, and I applaud her, and will, as long as I can talk about this, because that's just so hard to do. And she did it, and thanks to her. So I know I went on and on, but I want people to know that if you're thinking of maybe talking about this, that's what happens. And you have my word, it will never waver, never change. You will be treated the exact same way. And if at the end of a month of talking, you say no story, no story. That's how that works. And so anyway, I've gone on too long on that, but at least that's the process.
I have a question. So we're talking about 2 governing bodies here involved in this story. And obviously there's been a lot of spotlight on Dalilah from her own actions. One of the things that Tarah talked about was how she alleges that Dalilah uses rumors against, skaters in the rink. I can say from personal experience on social media, after the death of John Coughlin, she accused both of us of being responsible for his death in public, and rallied people behind that. I also have seen it happen, right? I also I think there were a lot of questions about, obviously John Coughlin's autopsy wound up on Radar Online, where they were accusing someone of trying to take his commentary job. There was a lot of, things being thrown around at the time that were unusual. At that time, SafeSport wanted US Figure Skating to request an independent investigation. US Figure Skating wanted SafeSport to look into this. Obviously, Tarah Kayne training with Dalilah, this happens mostly post-Coughlin. They were training there a little bit before and in the time after until last fall. whose responsibility is it to be kind of managing the situation? Could US figure skating have suspended Dalilah before SafeSport, issued sanctions? What kind of is that situation?
Yeah, as I understand it, and sometimes it can be confusing, and I end up making calls to try to make sure I understand every detail. So, and I know Dave, you and Jonathan, you know this, of course, too. But Dave, you have. Let me say this. I know you know a lot about these. I know you have a lot of connections, and I know people confide in you, and I think that's also so admirable. And I think I hope that people continue to confide in you and talk to you about these things. And you've been a very important part of encouraging some people to talk and tell their stories and just being plugged in. I think that's, so I know you get the lay of the land as well. Both of you do. As I understand it, once SafeSport, US Center for SafeSport, which was established in 2017, after several years of like, where is it? Come on, get it going. It did get going. And people think it was because of the gymnastics scandal. And it really was in the works. Obviously, the gymnastics horrors of Larry Nassar, just absolutely the worst thing ever. Not that we're ranking these things, but 600, whatever, gymnasts. That, of course, became a very, very big focus for all of us. And a lot of people think SafeSport got going from that point, but certainly it's been going the last few years. Once SafeSport takes over, then they take over. And what I've heard from NGBs is that, okay, SafeSport has it, so that is their jurisdiction now. Then when SafeSport suspends someone, temporary measure, whatever it might be, it will then appear on the website of the SafeSport part of that national governing body. Now, is that the right way to do it? Like, for example, I think all of us say, wow, when you read what Tarah Kayne went through, just horrific. Just the verbal abuse with sexual innuendo and sexual harassment, as she described the allegations against Dalilah Sappenfield. What if someone found this out, and why couldn't they just literally get her out of the sport, right? That's our natural reaction. And I think what US figure skating would say, and I would never, ever speak for US figure skating, and they would never want me to speak for them. But I think what they're saying is, obviously, is SafeSport is working on this. It is SafeSport. So that's what they're saying. You do bring up a good point about after John Coughlin's death, SafeSport ended its investigation. And the reason they said they ended their investigation, and people can find these stories from February of 2019, because I reported on this, as did others, that they said, well, we have to stop it because the whole point of this is to deal with the allegation in front of us. And the concern, again, this is what SafeSport said on the record, that the concern is that, of course, this person, in this case, Coughlin, could do whatever to in this case, it was 3 allegations, 3 reports of sexual abuse. So whoever these 3 people were, they obviously, Coughlin, according to SafeSport, was a threat to them. So that's why he was suspended. And well, now Coughlin, tragically, very blunt thing to say here, but he's gone, he's dead. So he is no longer a threat to those 3 people. That was the thinking, and that's what's on the record from SafeSport about why they didn't continue. In hindsight, and as I understand it, that might be in their that's in their code. I need to go back and look at every detail from that. It's been a couple of years, but what US Figure Skating wanted was it to be continued. And if it was continued, and this is pure hypothetical conversation here, but let's take it and run with it. If the SafeSport investigation had continued of Coughlin, even though SafeSport says they could not do that, they were not mandated to do it, but if it had, would it have started to uncover more of this sooner? Right?
The question I have for you about that is because this has been brought up with gymnastics, and Ali Raisman has obviously been such a voice for calling for independent investigations. There was a Ropes and Gray report that came out about gymnastics. That was public. SafeSport reports are never made public, is my understanding of it. is that we do not see public SafeSport reports about the actual details that are involved. Would that be a motivation for wanting SafeSport to continue instead of an independent investigation, because whatever they found maybe wouldn't be released to the public?
No, but it would have been released to, let's say they found abuse, let's say they found, right, then it would have gone, then they would have, again, this is a hypothetical, right? But then they would have gone, in this case, they would have had, let's just say, a temporary measure against Dalilah Sappenfield if they found out what Tarah Kayne told me. And of course, they've already got the temporary, restrictions on her. So they clearly have information already that has gotten her. And for those who've said, I know people are furious, and I see it on Twitter, and I understand, well, why haven't they done anything with Dalilah Sappenfield? Well, they actually have. I'm not defending SafeSport here at all. These are the facts. She cannot have any contact with 12 people. And Tarah Kayne is one of those people and Tarah went to SafeSport and told SafeSport the things that she told me. She cannot travel without an adult present with any skater, a supervising adult. And of course, she cannot coach without an adult supervisor. So I'm not saying that's good. Please don't email me or tweet at me. I'm not defending that. But what I'm saying is there are restrictions on Dalilah Sappenfield. And because there are restrictions on her, I was able to start the process of finding and connecting with Tarah Kayne. So if there's no restrictions, my story with Tarah Kayne probably doesn't happen. I mean, it's not like, the end of the world, but if the goal is to have people, if they're furious that Dalilah's still in the sport at all, well, this is how the process goes. I'm not in charge of SafeSport. I'm just a journalist covering it, but at least it's there, right? I mean, otherwise there's nothing. So would it have happened sooner? That's the question, right? But I think US figure skating would have had to wait for SafeSport, even an internal investigation that we would not have known about. And then, as you often do, Dave, you see, obviously, before you must have like extra special radar, that you are able to see these restrictions or temporary measures or suspensions that pop up on the SafeSport site. And for those who don't know about that, you can occasionally get tipped off to look at the site. Otherwise, I'll just sit there refreshing if I think something's coming, and it just pops up. It's not like there's an announcement. It just, the restriction, the suspension, whatever action, whatever measure is taken. And this is not just figure skating, it's tennis, it's track and field, it's gymnastics, it's equestrian, whatever, literally pops up on the SafeSport site, and you just have to keep looking at it. So that's what would have happened, I guess, in the scenario that is impossible because it never happened. I guess that's how it would have happened.
You are both so informed on this. I feel like a bit of an outsider here. So my question is, it has definitely been established that in the sport of figure skating, in particular, the pairs discipline, that there is some real systemic issues that are going on here. So it just seems like, as described by SafeSport having to drop the investigation, that SafeSport is more about reprimanding a person, and that hopefully that inspires change. I don't know, like SafeSport seems like holding individuals accountable, which is obviously very important. I'm just curious how that translates into the systemic change that is clearly so desperately needed in pair skating, both in the United States and obviously internationally as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Jonathan. And I know there's frustration out there. I hear it from people who get in touch with me and say they're so angry at SafeSport and, SafeSport's not doing the right thing and all that. Well, I am not here to be SafeSport's defender. As I've said over and over again, I'm a journalist, right? I'm covering the story. And by the way, I haven't even done, as I think I may have said, no columns. I've done no columns on this. This is just strict by the book reporting. No columns on Coughlin, no columns on Ashley Wagner, nothing. I mean, maybe people noticed that, maybe they didn't, but I'm a columnist, but I'm not doing columns on any of this because it's so important just to cover it by the book. But SafeSport, and you're right, pairs. I mean, SafeSport said, and it's a quote I use a lot, that there's a culture of abuse and grooming in figure skating. And they said that right after the Coughlin death. That's out there, that comment. You can easily find that, this culture that is, and in pair skating, they talked about it. And US figure skating's leadership has denied it at every turn. Well, you just can't deny it. I mean, look at these stories. I could just tell you about my work over the last, 2.5 years, a little bit more, from January, from, when the Coughlin news and then his tragic death. And, Ashley Wagner gets in touch, and Morgan Cipres and John Zimmerman. And I mean, even Peter Oppegard and the story, the allegations of biting, Jessica Fund, again, another hero, another a courageous person coming forward. And then of course, Tarah Kayne and Dalilah Sappenfield. So, and there's so many people out there on the Dalilah story and investigation, clearly. So I would expect maybe more will come. I would, again, love to talk to any of those people. You can find me easily, by the way. Sorry for the mention, but you can find me. My DMs are open on Twitter, Facebook message, or Christine Elizabeth Brennan. It's a double E there, Christine Elizabeth with a Z, Brennan @gmail.com, or my website is just my name, christinebrennan.com, and you can email me there. And it can be confidential. Absolutely. I would love to hear from you. But so SafeSport is, it's the best thing we have going right now. So I know people get angry, and I've heard from several people, well, Richard Callaghan wasn't, kicked out of the sport, right? Forever. SafeSport wanted him kicked out forever. An arbitrator came back and gave him 3 years. This is a fact. This is not an opinion. I'm not giving my opinion. So if you're mad at SafeSport, SafeSport kicked him out for life. An arbitrator brought him back after 3 years, which we're still in those 3 years. I don't know, if he's, what parent would go to Richard Callaghan after that? I don't know. I mean, maybe people will. I can't even imagine. But SafeSport, if you're mad, be mad at the arbitrator, right? On that one. I mean, and for those who hate SafeSport, and they don't need me to defend them either. Obviously, I don't, none of these people want me to, I'm sure, to defend them. But I will say this. This is a fact, guys. If SafeSport doesn't exist, Richard Callaghan is coaching today, right? Because there's nothing to get rid of him. Now, maybe it falls back to US figure skating, Dave, in that scenario of kind of chatting about what could say, if there's no SafeSport, I guess the NGB could do it, I guess, but there's no structure for that. I've heard a lot over the year, like John Zimmerman got a 2-year ban, and then that was overturned. And he's still on probation for failing to report for a year's probation. And my sense is, and I always like John very, very much, dealing with him. So again, there's no vendettas here. It's just where the stories and the news and the facts and the quotes take me is what I write. But for those who are angry that Zimmerman is not still on his 2-year suspension, SafeSport gave him a 2-year suspension. An arbitrator took that away in July. If you're mad, why are you mad at SafeSport? Be mad at the arbitrator. And then I would take it a step further, arbitration. Why do we have that, right? If people are really angry, like that Callaghan's still going to be able to potentially coach in a couple of years, and John Zimmerman is back coaching, well, then I guess you're kind of mad at the United States structure of justice and punishment, right? And the fact that you can have a hearing in this country. Now I'm going a little bit, far afield here. You guys know exactly what I'm saying. In the United States, people do have a chance to have a hearing. In the United States, people do have a chance, in this case, to have arbitration. So if you're mad, figure skating people, and I hear from you, so I know you are, that's okay. You have every right to be. But step back and look at this. And who are you mad at? And you're probably mad at the system of the beautiful United States of American system that allows people to fight for their innocence. And that's just a fact. That is not SafeSport. SafeSport has thrown the book. They threw the book at John Zimmerman, 2 years. People wanted him gone forever. 2 years is more than 0. And SafeSport obviously wanted to get rid of Richard Callaghan forever. And that was SafeSport. And I would also say one last little thing, because again, I hear about this a lot. I'm sure you guys do too, right? Where people are like furious at SafeSport and they're not doing anything and it's terrible and whatever. I get it. I respect that point of view. Let's look at the French figure skater, pair skater, Morgan Cipres. Cipres, however, here it's pronounced all kinds of ways. He is gone. He is gone from the sport, the competitive sport, right? He's gone. He would be getting ready for the Olympics. There's no way on earth he leaves the sport, what was that, 6 months ago, with an Olympics coming in less than a year. Beijing, of course, in February of 2022. There's no way. He's gone for one reason, because a 13-year-old and her family had the guts to talk to me about the pictures that he sent to her. And in fact, the state of Florida has a warrant out for his arrest to this minute, as far as I know, and felony charge against him that, of course, he's not in Florida, so he's out of the country. So is that not success? Cipres gone, literally gone from the sport. Again, I am not here to defend US figure skating, to defend the ISU, to defend SafeSport. I'm here with just facts. Cipres is gone from his sport. That would not have happened without the courage and the honesty of people speaking out, in this case, coming to me, which I'm so honored about. And of course, SafeSport, they're an incredible investigation that they went as far as they could. And so when people are down on SafeSport, okay, and you have every right to be. I would say, I would put these facts and these thoughts out there as potentially a conversation topic about, is it really that bad, or is it in fact doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing?
But it's interesting, a topic you bring up, Christine, because a lot of the comments we received are kind of split down the middle. One is the outrage where, how is this possible? How are these things being overturned? How are they still involved with the sport? And the other is this perhaps generational divide where they just become fearful that now anyone can say anything and cause a ripple in the sport. But of course, that's exactly what we're looking to do if there's supposed to be systemic change. But I find a lot of comments that we receive are actually coming from truly both sides of this, because there is such a fear in changing that system. And Dave, sort of like we were talking about with Horkina, people that came up in that system are so baffled why people now have a problem with it, because it's how the system has always been. Yeah, it's scary logic.
I just want to say that the coaches, I think there are some coaches that do have a fear about that anyone could claim anything about them, but that SafeSport also does have a rule about retaliation and looking into what someone's motivation is for reporting. So that's also important to mention there. Not to defend either way, because things do get thrown around in ice rinks when people are upset, and I'm sure in other sports and things like that. But there is, obviously a code about retaliation and why someone would be reporting something that is a part of their process. But
and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I've heard that too. I certainly hear that from people I know well in the sport. Someone gets mad at a coach says something bad to a kid one day, and okay, is that going to be a SafeSport violation? I mean, hundreds of coaches are not being kicked out of the sport, right? I mean, and I'm not laughing like this is funny at all. I'm just kind of more exasperated. And someone, well, it used to be you could touch a skater and now you can't. Well, yeah. Yeah, exactly. What used to be a skater could live with you and now they can't. Yes, exactly. That's right. That's called society moving forward. That's called being smart about things, learning from mistakes in the past and becoming better as a society, as a sport, as a culture. There are rules that have changed in journalism. There's rules changed in your lives, right? I mean, this is what happens if a society is moving forward and growing in a modern way. And so I am amazed, and some of these people are good friends of mine. I'm amazed when I hear some of this and a defense of like a coach or something for letting something happen or for going too far or whatever the allegation might be, true or not. It's to me, it seems very simple of what you can do and what you can't do. And I'm not at all sympathetic when I hear this. And what I'll usually say back to people, and I know, Jonathan, you weren't defending it. You were just throwing it.
No. Yes, exactly. I'm just saying we do hear both things. Yeah,
absolutely. No. And these are good people, right? These are not people who are going to ever be investigated by SafeSport, but they still throw it out there. And that's total, I mean, it's part of change too, right? You just have to start to realize this is your new normal and your new reality. But I am amazed. I will say this, and again, we are on the same page. I know the three of us, and I'm sure hopefully, and most of the people watching us are, right? That get with the plan already. In other words, like, yes, let's say, let's just hypothetical. A 15-year-old girl is out there and she looks 20 and she thinks a coach is really cool, right? And so she's flirting with that coach, and the coach is an adult. Let's make him, let's make this a male coach, a female skater. Could be any combination, but let's, for this particular anecdote that is completely fictional, I'm just making it up as I go here. And that coach, let's say the coach is 25, and this adorable, wonderful skater, as is has a crush on him. Mm-hmm. That is 100% the problem of the coach. Mm-hmm. Right. 100%. And yeah. Oh, she's flirtatious and she looks old. I've heard all this. Maybe you guys have too. She looks older or whatever.
So what?
Come on. Yeah. What world are you living in? And again, I am not writing opinion. I'm not writing columns. I'm speaking now as a human being. Skating and all these sports have to get with the plan. Those old days are gone. The old days of blaming a woman or a man, if, it obviously it could be either a young man, young woman, for the absolute horrifying, reprehensible behavior of older people who should know better. Those days are gone. And that's what SafeSport, the conversation that SafeSport is taking us to, and the work that SafeSport is taking us to in conjunction with national governing bodies. And so again, people can be mad and they can say, oh, they don't do anything. The times are changing. You've got to get with it. And otherwise you allow the stuff that we read on Friday morning that I wrote about Tarah. And I hope that everyone says never again should someone so wonderful be treated, forget it, wonderful, just a human being, wonderful, and not be treated so horribly by someone who is her coach, and allegedly anyway, of course. And that's where we are, and that's where skating is. And it's it's time for all these people who are complaining to stop complaining and get with the plan and report those who are doing the wrong thing.
Well, as we wrap up, I just want to ask you, where are we in this? So obviously you asked Dalilah for comment. She thanked you for reaching out, didn't have a comment at this time. She has a chance to respond. Now, I think that's important for people to understand. And where do we go from here in the process?
Absolutely. Yeah. The first, I called her and left a voicemail, and I said, feel free to text or call. And she had about 16 hours before we published. And if she had said to me, give me another day, we would have given her another day. I mean, everyone has a chance to respond. And that's just, again, journalism 101. That's how we do this. And, I think, not to get political, but, what the former guy, 4 miles from me here in that White House on Pennsylvania Avenue, the damage he did to this country, I think the idea that the media, that the press, that journalists are the enemy and we're out to get people, that lingers. I mean, that's there. Forget lingers. It's many people believe that to their core, and that is so wrong. And I'm not saying journalists don't make mistakes. I'm not saying, of course, that we do things wrong, and so there are bad journalists, like there's bad doctors and bad lawyers and whatever. But what Donald Trump said, it was just so devastating. And I hope that people maybe, again, me or any other journalist, that the trust and the understanding of how we do our jobs. It's so opposite of what that man said. And I hopefully that comes through, because on a story like this, it is so essential that trust is there, and that sense that you're dealing with a human being on the other end of the phone or on the Zoom call that right. You can trust. And I know you guys get it. And this is not, by the way, I'm advertising and putting my shingle up. No. But it really is important that is so not what I am and what I've been for all these years in my career, and my colleagues, all of us who care so much about getting it right and about telling people stories if they want to tell them. And so where do we go? My sense is, as SafeSport's clearly investigating and continuing its investigation, that I know. And I know that because the temporary restrictions, measures, whatever, are still on the website. So if those were gone, that would mean that the investigation was over. And I've got to believe it's kind of the complete opposite of that. If my reporting and if Tarah's incredible courage coming forward is helpful in getting to the truth, whatever that may be, for SafeSport, that's great. I write something, I have no ulterior motive. I have no sense of it's going to change anything. You write something like you let the chips fall where they may. I know people are saying that is no way that is true of a journalist. It is 100% true of this journalist. I write it and you put it out there, and then the society decides what they're going to do with that piece of information, that fact, that story, that wonderful courage of Tarah Kayne. And so that's where that is. I am open, as you know, Dave and Jonathan, and again, it's not like, oh, it's all about me at all. I mean, you're talking to me, so I'm talking about my reporting, but there are other journalists out there who've covered these issues. So if you do feel comfortable and you're listening and you know something, come to me, come to another journalist. Dave, I know you are a person who is available to a lot of people. And it seems like almost everyone has your cell number, or you have everyone's cell number, which is that's the Rolodex of the 21st century. And whatever the case might be, you know, come to us, because I'm not working with SafeSport. I'm not working with US Figure Skating. I'm not working with anyone for that month. I'm working with Tarah Kayne. I'm not working against Dalilah Sappenfield. I'm not working for her. I'm just working for getting a story. In that case, I had someone I was talking to and telling a story. So my sense is this will continue. How could it not? Just because of the nature of what happened the other day, and hopefully, well, if there are people that want to talk, hopefully or not, that they find their voice and feel comfortable talking, whether it's to SafeSport, whether it's to a journalist, whomever. But my sense is that this is a big story that will continue. And obviously Tarah Kayne's words need to be heard, listened to, and the allegations need to be addressed, and the truth needs to come out.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to just point out is that people maybe was lost in the Coughlin situation, that story, is that when you reported about the interim restriction against John Coughlin, 2 of the 3 reporters, my understanding is, came forward after your story. Right, the initial story came out, 2 came over, and then another ruling came out. The email went out with the PSA, and things went forward. And I think that has something that was lost in the process, that people maybe have not understood. They focused on maybe one initial report and things like that. I think within the sport is something that's been.
Well, there was, as you know, in December, there was that temporary measure, which at the time it was so new, I wasn't quite even sure what that meant. Maybe, I don't know, Dave, if you did, you know, it was all very early in the process. And then, yes, I reported on that. And again, you know, if I think sometimes a journalist reporting on something, whether it be in a newspaper, on a website, TV, radio, can act as a catalyst for others to come forward. Just that's why news is important, right? You reach people and people can react to it and feel whatever they might feel. And if you feel like, okay, I just read about this and now I know something about it, I might come forward. So again, no preconceived notion that that's going to happen or not. But certainly the Coughlin case moved relatively quickly at that point. And again, you know, if for those friends of his, I'm sure there will be people who are his dear friends and family who are maybe watch this. It was heartbreaking. And even as I wrote those stories that would be perceived as negative towards John Coughlin, my goodness, I mean, I think about him a lot, and what a tragedy that he took his life. And I did email him and to get his comment, because I said how we always get comments, and he did reply in early January to, and I have those quotes that we've used a lot about his denial of the allegations. And he got right back to me, John did. As I said, I emailed and he got right back to me. Thank you for getting in touch. And here's my comment. So it makes me sad just thinking of him and you know, and all of that. So again, there's lots of sadness to go around. But by no means do I ever forget him. And I personally liked him very, very much. And again, I think that's something I hope, you know, I'm sure there's people out there that about you guys, right? They love you, they hate you, how could they hate you? But you know, there's stuff, right? And-
They'll tell you how in the comments, Christine.
Yeah,
Fear not.
exactly.
Yeah,
I'm
You
sure.
went on Twitter, you know how it goes.
Oh, yeah, right. And that's fine. I mean, bring it on. I mean, I get it. I know you guys do too. But we're human beings. And so absolutely, your heart breaks for kind of all sides of these stories, and that we're even having to talk about them. But it is so important that the survivors and the victims be heard. And that is my headline.
Agreed.
And, no doubt about that, 100%. And again, this week, I want to just, one more shout out. I know I've said it a lot, but Tarah Kayne, whether watching or your friends or whatever, I have such immense respect for Tarah, for her courage, her grace, her dignity. It was so hard for her to talk about this and then to go over it in detail so that I made sure I had every single syllable right. And she did it. And she spent hours with me on the phone, and I will forever be indebted to her for coming forward and talking about these allegations that she told me about that are so important that they're out there now and being discussed, but so difficult for her. So again, what her courage should be remembered forever.
Well, thank you so much, Christine, for coming on. And we will be back to talk about our regular figure skating news and views right after this. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.